Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royce. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. We'll remember the 1985 movie Back to the Future when the car traveled through time. Today, technology allows cars to travel through the air. Alef Flying Car is the first U.S. company to produce a flying car. Jim Dukhovny is the president and CEO of Alef and will share some exciting news and insight with us. Hi, Jim.
Hello. Hi, Daphne.
Please tell us who you are and how you get involved with producing a flying car.
Sure. So I, together with three of my co-founders, Konstantin, Oleg, and Paul, started the Alef Aeronautics, the company which works on producing the flying car, in 2015, about 10 years ago. And I pretty much My main, so I'm the CEO of the company. So actually, my three co-founders are the people who built and who designed the flying car. I'm the guy with crazy ideas who goes begging for money for investors. That's pretty much my role in the company.
That's the toughest job.
Well, I wouldn't put it this way because my co-founders have to solve things which kind of almost contradict the laws of physics, right? You cannot break the laws of physics, but many tasks which we have to do look like they contradict the laws of physics, and they have to deal with it almost every day. So I think their job is tougher.
What does Alef stand for?
Sure. So Aleph is the first letter in many, let's say, Middle Eastern alphabets, which is Hebrew, Arabic, Persian, Syrian, Phoenician, and many, many others, um, going all the way back to history, to like even Babylon and before that, way before that, right? So it's a first letter of many core of the, for example, religious documents. Aleph is also first letter in the alphabets in which all those documents were written. So Aleph, not only that, Greek alpha also historically came from Aleph, and Latin A, which we all of us use, came from Greek alpha, and then by definition from Aleph, which means it's not only first letter, it's actually first letter of other first letters. And Aleph produces the first flying car in history, since that's the name Aleph.
You are the first here in US.
No, we're not the first in US. We're the
Not.
first in history. So traditional definition of the flying car is very simple. It's a regular car with a vertical takeoff. It's not an electric helicopter. It's not a drone which you put in your trunk. It's just a car, which you can drive as a regular car, which you can do as everything with a regular car, with a vertical takeoff. That never happened in history until we actually produced that.
Is the Alef quiet compared to drone and helicopter
Do you mean the noise level?
noise level?
So depends on what you. So it's many, many, many times quieter than helicopter. It's many times quieter than your regular airplanes. It's not fair to compare to drone because drones is many people don't understand what drone is. Drone is UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle, right? So drones can be big, drones can be small. There are many types of drones. There are toy drones, there are huge drones. So that's kind of like not probably correct comparison here. You can compare it to motorcycle, right? So it's also quieter than most loud motorcycles, for example, right? And that's what I'm talking about during the takeoff right next to you, when you stand it right next to it. When it's in the air, the decibel level which you hear is actually zero, like literally zero. because it's electric and because of the way propellers and everything else structured. So the decibel level when it's actually operating in the air is at certain altitude is actually 0.
Wow. Is Alef fully electric? What is the
Yes.
travel range and flying time? Can Alef use regular charging stations?
Alef is 100% electric. We are it's still question which plugs we will use, but yes, you will be able to use regular charging stations, but as you know, there are like different types of plugs for the electric vehicles. So yes, it's meant to be just fully integrated in the infrastructure, regular infrastructure. It is 100% electric at this point. So yes, it's a regular EV. It's people focusing on the aircraft part of the car, but first and foremost, it's an regular EV, regular electric car, similar to Tesla, Lucid, or anything else.
What is the range that you can drive, fly if you're fully charged?
So there's projected range. The reason I'm saying projected range is because right now, we made what it's called an ultralight aircraft, and that's a separate topic of conversation, for which we had to reduce the amount of batteries just to make it legal to fly in the United States. That being said, the full version Model A, which we plan to actually deploy to customers, the maximum driving range is projected to be 200 miles or maximum flying range at the cruise speed is projected to be 110 miles.
Okay.
Now, first, there's important things about it. First of all, it's an or, not an and. It's an or, it's one or the other, or the combination of two, right? You're welcome to drive part of the way and fly part of the way. Also, the important thing, this is a maximum at optimal battery usage, right? So in practice, it can be actually there is a possibility for it to be more. Like it also depends on weight, and it's also projected, right? Which means we've tested full scale with number of batteries with a certain range. Um, there are laws of physics which you cannot break, which means it will go 110 with an optimal usage. But that's what it is for now.
Would that matter how high you fly or how fast you go?
Yes, your second question is probably for the flying part, not for the driving part. So both of those, yes, matters because in the vertical takeoff, during the vertical, this is where most of the battery kind of gets drained, right? So the vehicle is very efficient during driving. It's very efficient during the flight forward. It's incredibly inefficient during the taking off and going vertically into the air. Now, the good thing, this is by far the shortest, only several seconds part of this, right? It's only seconds. That being said, if you go high enough, like I don't know, like 10,000 feet or something like that, you will burn enough battery to have a much, much, much smaller range. That's number one. Speed in the air also matters because there is something called cruise speed. At cruise speed, you optimally use battery for the longest distance. If you fly faster, your distance actually would be less.
Is there a regulation how high you can go for the flying car so far?
There's no regulation how high you can go. And by the way, there's no regulations about flying cars at all. There are regulations about certain types of aircraft which we fit, right? Existing regulations, existing aircraft with just another version of existing type of aircraft, right? Now, there's no regulation about how high technically. Well, with an asterisk, right? There are regulations in which type of airspace you can fly, right? There's Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, there's different types of airspaces. So there are regulations where you can fly. So when you look up, you see air looks open to you, everything is so on. But for the aviation people, they know that there are also paths, maps, different type of airspace which is in the air. So uh, certain types of aircrafts under certain conditions allowed to fly only in certain types of airspaces.
Understand. Do you think it would regulate in certain areas will be allowed to fly, maybe open space rather than the city limits?
So in the short term, nobody's gonna allow you to fly in the city limits for many, many reasons. Um, you cannot, this type of aircraft which we are right now presenting, and again, we can do many types, but right now this one is not allowed to fly over densely populated areas. And the city like San Francisco would be a densely populated areas. That being said, it's the short term. Again, long term, you should be able to fly everywhere. The short term, you should be able to fly either rural to city or rural to rural. And inside the city, you would drive. Keep people again. I'm emphasizing the point. First and foremost, it's a regular car. It's an EV with an extra functionality of vertically taking off and flying. So yes, in the short term, only in the short term, that would mostly be like, I don't know, Half Moon Bay to San Francisco, um, like Santa Cruz to, I don't know, Morgan Hill, something like that. Again, that's probably, I'm just taking out of my head. I don't have the map in front of me. You have to have a map. But yes, for certain this type of aircraft, you should not short term expect it to fly over the city. That being said, it's designed to relieve the traffic in the city. So the long term, that's what it is. But we'll have to get there in the incremental steps.
I was hoping I could escape the traffic. I guess not so fast yet.
Well, depends where your traffic is because most of the well, city obviously has traffic at 5 p.m. Cities like at standstill. But I, for example, live near Palo Alto and commute to San Mateo and to Milpitas, right? So in my case, the most of the traffic is intersection of 101 and 92 freeways. And 237 somewhere there. There's also intersection, right? So most of your traffic is actually at intersections of freeways or some kind of like a narrow spot or something where something is happening, right? And that's probably the place you would want to escape, and that's what the flying car provides you, right? Escaping those bottlenecks, escaping the very specific places where the bottleneck actually occurs, the traffic jams.
That's a good idea. So you mentioned you and your team developed a flying car for approximately 15 years. What were your challenges?
So not that old, 10 years only so far. Hopefully by 15 years, everybody's gonna have it already. So yes, only 10 years. Challenges are everywhere. I mean, it's like think about the regular startup. There's like regular challenges that every startup has, multiplied by the fact that this literally tries to go against the laws of physics almost every day, multiplied by the fact that transportation is one of the slowest industries where with a regulation, right? Where regulation is very slow going on. Multiplied by the fact that this is very new, multiplied by the fact that it's a significant change um, in like a daily lives of everybody. It's integrating in the city and everything. So challenges are everywhere. The good news is that most of the challenges at this point, we are already either bypassed them or we are at a spot where we clearly see there's the next steps are already there. That's talking about the legal, that's talking about customers, that's talking about everything. Where literally today we can do everything. We can sell you the car, you can legally fly that. Um, it's going to work, it's going to be safe, it's going to be safer than everything else. But there are a huge bunch of asterisks. Like I just mentioned, you cannot fly over densely populated areas. The initial price would be high, like with every kind of initial transportation, right? With volume, you get price lower, but initially high. So um, challenges are everywhere, but most technical challenges we already overcame because, as you see from the video, it's already working. Most of the legal challenges, we know how to make it work today, right? Today without any kind of change whatsoever. The challenge, if you will be to that long term, which I'm talking about, right? Make it work in the cities, make it work at scale, taking the price down and everything. That being said, there's a very clear path. And for people inside the industry, they actually understand that this path is clearer than anybody think it is. The path is very clear. Government is working on it. They actually moving way faster than even I thought they would, because they understand how important it is. There's a challenge from China, Middle East, and everything else who are moving even faster than US does. So we are more than okay short term. And to make that challenge work long term, there's a very clear path right now. It's actually may happen sooner than most people think.
For your car, it's basically 2-in-1. You can drive, you can fly. How big is your car? Is it bigger than Cybertruck or it is similar sizes?
So we, as far as the size, is actually 3-in-1. It's a car, rotorcraft, and an airplane. But we so the car size, it's a good thing that you brought up. It's one of those challenges of the laws of physics which I mentioned. The car itself is the maximum size which can fit into the parking space, and the driving lane and in all existing infrastructure in your garage, which means it easily fits on all of this. But this is a maximum size which we can do, right? Because if more than that, you won't be able to use whatever you use every day. The challenge here is the bigger your aircraft, the more kind of it's easier to have bigger wings, have larger propellers. All of that gives you more range, more amount of pounds you can lift and so on, right? So size is actually dependent on that. So we have to work with a very small size for the aircraft. It's incredibly small. Like it's one of the smallest aircrafts ever built. And we have to make it work really efficient on the range and size with existing other aircrafts. And that's one of those challenges where laws of physics says, no, you have to pick one or the other. This is why my co-founders, Konstantin, Oleg, and Paul, had to, you cannot break the laws of physics, but they had to make sure they kind of like fake and go around the laws of physics. This is why it's very efficient. It's more efficient than some of the eVTOLs, which is called electrical vertical takeoff and landing, like electric helicopters. It actually has a bigger range. It's more efficient. It can go longer while having incredibly small size.
Very interesting. So besides the driver, how many passengers can be in?
So technically, I answer that question usually 1.5. So it's the car is meant for 1.5 people, like either the driver and the passenger or just the driver. Um, because of your previous question of the size, we're also limited in the width of the cabin. The limitation in the width of the cabin means you can either fit one white person or two less white people. it's not a limitation of weight, it's a limitation of size. Again, this is something we can improve in the future, making it like a four-person vehicle and everything. As of right now, for the first one, it's about 1.5. So again, the goal is to create something. It's called, well, we actually bypassed MVP, but in a startup world, it's called MVP, minimum viable product, right? So the minimum product which would be useful to you for the scenarios which you just mentioned, which we can sell to you and you would get it, and the value of your buy will be worth to you. Now, there is actually in order for that to happen, there is something which we call our, not challenge, not problem, but on our radar, it's not number one, it's number 0. Before we can sell anything to you, before we can make happen everything I just said, there's something number 0. And that number 0 is safety. The minimum viable product is already by definition have to be incredibly safe. Unbelievably safe. Safer than aircraft which already works today. Safer than airplanes which exist today, safer than helicopters. So it has to, by definition, be already safer than them. And this is the minimum viable product which we can actually sell to you, where safety will be on par or actually more than existing helicopters and airplanes.
Do drivers need special license or training to own one?
Well, you do need a train. So it's two separate questions about licensing and the training. Now, the ultralight category is really interesting. In different countries, it works different. In the United States, the weight amount allowed is very small, incredibly small. Like, very, very, you don't understand how small it is. But that being said, it does not require a pilot license. In other countries, the weight allowance is much, much, much bigger, like literally 5 to 7 times bigger. But you need to have something which is called ultralight or microlight pilot license. Those are not the same as a pilot license. It's not the same. It's much simpler, much, much, much simpler, but you still need that. Now, when I do say that, I always add one more important thing. Just because in the United States, for example, you do not need license, does not mean you can break all those laws which I mentioned before in the air. When you fly in the air, there are many, many laws, right? Like you have to abide by the rules, regulations, they're very clear and everything. The fact that you do not hold a license does not mean you cannot abide by those rules. So ultralight category, which means responsibility is on you. If you break the law, you're not gonna fly anymore. The second part of your question is training. It is actually way simpler to train. It's nowhere close again to any kind of helicopter or existing airplanes. It's nowhere close to that. That being said, yes, training needs to be provided, even if it's very simple. So we will provide the training on this. That being said, for me to train you how to actually operate Alef Flying Car, it's literally gonna take, I don't know, like maybe a couple hours or something. It's very simple. But you on your own have to study all those laws and regulations which I mentioned on how to operate it in the air, right? We again, we will help you, we will provide you this information, but you have to know all those laws and regulations in order to actually operate that.
So it's very interesting because the car only fit 1.5 person. How do you train the other person since you couldn't be in the same car?
Right. So again, you looking at it as something new, which it is. It's something completely brand new, which needs to have all the new laws, all the new regulations, all the new everything. That's not actually the case. The case is the opposite of what we're trying to do short term. Short term is exactly as any other aircraft in the air and car on the ground. So exactly as you would go to school for training right now, exactly the same, right? So nothing changes here. Our goal in the short term to make sure all the infrastructure, like all infrastructure, which already exists, should already work with us, right? All the ways you train people, all the ways you use existing parking, lending, everything else, right? Should exactly be the same. This is what we're designing in the short term, right? Um, so think about this, like easier way to think about it is this. When we are on the ground, when the tires touch asphalt or whatever it is, it's exactly the same as Tesla. When it is in the air, when tires do not touch the ground, it's exactly the same as any other type of aircraft in the same classification. It's very simple.
You will mention ultralight. How heavy is ultralight?
So in United States, the weight of the whole aircraft should be under 254 pounds. In other countries, it's mostly 1,200 pounds. So one of the possible strategies is for us to actually first deploy it outside the United States and then make it work in the United States. That's one of the possible strategies, right? So we're still looking at it. That's about kind of like a weight limitations.
What is it like to drive or fly in one of your flying car?
So again, as I mentioned before, I am the technical person, but probably the least technical person on the team. So it is my co-founders who build the car, who design the car, who know everything about the car. Uh, the reason I'm explaining that is they don't give me the controls to be a pilot. So I'm usually not the person driving or flying the car. It's my co-founders. That's what they do. So I cannot describe you a personal experience. I can describe you an experience of seeing this many times and every day. And actually, I can describe you experience of NBC crew, right? So when NBC Nightly News came to actually shoot the car flying, the most interesting, from my perspective, reaction was, okay, it's a regular flying car. Okay, that works. So I think the most interesting experience I see from people is how natural it is, how people like, okay, okay, that's a flying car, right? So when you try to imagine it, when you're trying to see it, you like people try to imagine all kinds of things. You can see like all the comments under YouTube videos and everything. Um, Most of them have nothing to do with reality. When people actually see it in person and especially experience it, um, the most common reaction is like, okay, it's very natural. It's very okay. Like it's everything like that. So I think that's kind of the experience which people are missing who haven't experienced that in person.
I'm not sure my next question will be too technical, but if you know, that would be great. How does navigation work when you are in mid-air?
Same as for any other aircraft. You have like as you know, like you have like airplane navigations, helicopter navigations, drone navigations, as you mentioned, UAV navigations, right? It's just one of the type of navigation. We just use one of those types of navigations. It's very simple. Again, we do not invent anything new here in this particular field. We simply install and adapt to our configuration. That's all it is.
Will you have a different model than Model A and colors in a foreseeable future?
As far as the colors, that's a very interesting internal kind of discussion. The color which you see right now in Model Zero Ultralight, the one which is on all the news and everything, I voted against that color. I wanted completely different color, but that was completely outvoted. Plus, we have on board the famous car designer, the exterior car designer who designed Bugatti, Lotus, and everything. That's his idea to make color like that. So he's an expert. We'll listen to him. That being said, yes, I wanted variety of colors. I wanted much more vivid colors. But according to our designer and most of my co-founders agreed with him, that's a color which actually works best of showcasing the car, the features, the shape, and everything like that. I would love it to be blue, red, green, yellow, whatever, but I guess that's what we went with.
I know you already start taking pre-order on your first flying car. When can we expecting them to be on the road?
Depends on where you are in line. So if you are placing order right now, you're already going to be kind of starting the back of the line. That being said, if you are placing the order right now, you're going to be ahead of people who are going to place an order tomorrow. So many people actually what they're doing, they're putting a refundable deposit, which is pretty much getting your place in line, right? The earlier you get your place in line, the more it's worth, obviously. Um, I'll rephrase your question. When will the first person in the line get their car delivered? That's a different question from when you're gonna get your car, because that question is impossible to answer. We, as far as the first person on the list, and that's also there's also a question about who is the first person, but that's because there are three different lines. We think that so we are in the fundraising right now. I mean, we're already okay financially. We're actually doing better than most of our competitors financially. But we're still fundraising more in order, and specific reason we are fundraising more is speed up the process of getting this first car to the customer. That is a specific reason we are accepting investment right now. So the short answer is depending on how much we take in investment and when we take an investment. I would throw a semi-random number, and semi-random number would be in about somewhere next year in 2026. The reason I'm saying it's a semi-random number is because again, it depends on how fast and how much. It depends on several other factors. That being said, it's actually maybe sooner. If everything goes 100% according to plan, it would be way sooner. By doing the flying car, you're working on transportation for 10 years. There's no such thing as everything going 100% to plan ever. That's not happening. So we know that. So the reasonable answer would be 2026, but again, there's a lot of asterisks there, and some of the asterisks can make it faster, some of the asterisks can make it longer.
May I ask you what kind of materials you use to build a car?
Yeah, we use composite materials, mostly carbon fiber. This is kind of very obvious in the industry. I don't think anybody else uses anything else. It's obvious that carbon fiber is both strong enough and light enough for this specific transportation which we're doing. So this is kind of standard in the industry. That being said, when people tell you that they're using carbon fiber, that can mean like 100 different things, right? So one of my co-founders is PhD, Konstantin is a PhD in material sciences, so he does some magic with carbon fiber. Actually, Oleg and Paul on the other end also doing some other magic with carbon fiber. So we actually have different kinds of magics which we do, which we think makes it even stronger and even lighter than competitors.
Is your flying car made by machine or made by hand?
Both. Like, I mean, some parts, I mean, the car, if you're talking about the flying car, keep in mind it's a car in an aircraft. So there's a huge amount of different parts, large parts, small parts. Some of the parts we buy off the shelf, some of the parts produced by machines, some of the parts made by hand, some of the parts are 3D printed. It is very complex. It's a very complex production. So yes, on all four, and probably even more than that.
Please tell us where we can find your website and how people can get more information or pre-order a car.
Sure. So you can go to Alef, ALEF .aero, AERO. So it's Alef .aero, ALEF.aero, right? So 4 letters before the dot, 4 letters after the dot. And there you see like a big, huge button say pre-order the car. And then it's a very small form, simple form. You can just, very simple form, fill out and you get placed your refundable deposit there. There's a regular line, there's an express line. Separately, there's what we call investor line. So you can become actually an investor with a little bit bigger deposit. In this case, it's not even deposit. You're actually becoming investor and you get into the even bigger priority line than that. So it's kind of complicated like that, but it's actually very straightforward of getting your certificate that now you're proud of owner of place in line for the flying car.
Thank you so much, Jim. This is very informative, and I can't wait to see one on the road tomorrow.
Thanks, Daphne. I think it's gonna be tomorrow, but pretty soon, yes, and you should see it both on the road and off the road in the air too.
Thank you so much,
Thanks, Daphne.
and good luck with your productions.
Thank you.